Ibrahim Traoré's story is, in many ways, inseparable from the turbulent recent history of Burkina Faso. His journey to power is a reflection of the nation's struggles and aspirations. Born in 1988, Traoré rose through the ranks of the Burkinabe military. His early years were marked by a commitment to military discipline and national service. He participated in the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali, known as MINUSMA, and actively engaged in counterterrorism operations within Burkina Faso's borders. These experiences honed his skills and deepened his understanding of regional security challenges. However, it was his role in the nation's political upheavals that truly thrust him into the spotlight. His involvement in these events showcased his leadership potential and strategic acumen. In January 2022, Traoré joined the coup that ousted President Roch-Marc Kabore. This bold move was a response to growing frustrations among the military and the public. This event, fueled by widespread dissatisfaction with the government's handling of the Islamist insurgency, marked a turning point in Burkina Faso's political landscape. The public's demand for change was palpable. Yet the January coup proved to be only a prelude to a more dramatic power shift. The political tension continued to simmer, setting the stage for further upheaval. On September 30, 2022, Traoré, then a relatively unknown military captain, led a second coup. This bold action demonstrated his willingness to take decisive steps in times of crisis. This time, the target was interim leader Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, himself brought to power just 9 months prior. The rapid succession of coups highlighted the instability within the nation's leadership. Traoré's justification for this audacious move: he claimed it was necessary to address the urgent security issues plaguing the country. The new leader argued that Damiba had failed to effectively address the nation's escalating security crisis. This reasoning resonated with many who were desperate for stability. The September coup cemented Traoré's position as Burkina Faso's new leader. His rise was met with both celebration and skepticism. At 34 years old, he became the world's youngest head of state. This remarkable achievement brought international attention to his leadership. His ascent to power, swift and unexpected, marked the beginning of a new and uncertain chapter for the West African nation. The world watched closely as Burkina Faso navigated this transition. Traoré, once a soldier in the ranks, now held the fate of Burkina Faso in his hands. His leadership style, shaped by his military background, would be put to the test. His background, deeply rooted in the military, inevitably shaped his approach to leadership. This influence was evident in his decisions and policies. This influence, however, was met with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The people of Burkina Faso were divided in their expectations of their new leader. Would this young leader, forged in the crucible of conflict, be able to guide Burkina Faso towards a more stable and prosperous future? The challenges ahead were immense, or would his rule simply mark another chapter in the nation's ongoing struggle against violence and instability? Only time would tell if Traoré could bring the change that Burkina Faso so desperately needed. Traoré's justification for seizing power rested heavily on the dire security situation plaguing Burkina Faso. The country had been grappling with a growing Islamist insurgency for years, which had only intensified over time. This insurgency, with links to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, had destabilized vast swaths of the country, making daily life increasingly perilous. The violence had resulted in a devastating loss of life, widespread displacement, and a pervasive sense of fear among the population. Thousands of families were forced to flee their homes, seeking safety in overcrowded refugee camps. Traoré argued that the previous government, led by President Kabore, had proven woefully inadequate in addressing this crisis. He claimed that the administration's efforts were insufficient and lacked the urgency required to tackle the insurgency effectively. He pointed to the government's inability to stem the tide of violence and its perceived indifference to the plight of ordinary citizens suffering the brunt of the conflict. The streets of Burkina Faso were often scenes of chaos and distress. In Traoré's view, a drastic change in leadership was necessary to save the nation from collapse. He believed that only a new, more decisive leadership could restore stability and security. Furthermore, Traoré linked the issue of security to the broader question of living conditions. He emphasized that the ongoing violence was exacerbating the already dire economic situation. He argued that the government's failure to address the insurgency was intrinsically tied to its inability to improve the lives of Burkina Faso's citizens. The lack of development and infrastructure was glaring. Poverty, unemployment, and lack of opportunity, he contended, created fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. Young people, in particular, were vulnerable to radicalization due to their bleak prospects. By framing his actions as a necessary response to both the security and economic crises, Traoré sought to garner legitimacy for his regime. He presented his coup as a last resort to save the nation. He presented himself as a decisive leader, willing to take bold action where others had faltered. His supporters viewed him as a beacon of hope in a time of despair. However, his decision to seize power through extra-constitutional means immediately raised concerns about his commitment to democratic principles. Many feared that his actions could set a dangerous precedent. The international community, while acknowledging the severity of Burkina Faso's challenges, largely condemned the coup. They called for a return to democratic governance and respect for the rule of law. From the outset, Traoré's leadership style was deeply informed by his military background. In stark contrast to his predecessors, he adopted a hands-on approach, particularly when it came to the ongoing fight against the Islamist insurgency. This approach manifested in several ways. Firstly, Traoré prioritized direct engagement with the armed forces. He frequently visited military bases and outposts, often in areas directly affected by the conflict. These visits were not mere photo opportunities. Traoré used them to rally the troops, assess the situation on the ground, and demonstrate his personal commitment to the fight. Secondly, Traoré sought to bolster the ranks of the military by actively encouraging the recruitment of civilian volunteers, known as Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, or VDP. These volunteers, often poorly equipped and trained, nonetheless represented a surge in manpower for the beleaguered army. Traoré's embrace of the VDP reflected his belief in a people's war against the insurgency. This direct engagement with the military, coupled with his rhetoric of national unity and determination, resonated with many within Burkina Faso. Traoré was seen as a leader willing to get his hands dirty, a stark contrast to the perceived detachment of previous administrations. In the early days of his rule, Traoré appeared open to collaborating with Western partners, particularly the United States, in combating the Islamist insurgency that plagued the region. He signaled a willingness to accept military aid and logistical support, recognizing the immediate benefits such assistance could bring to his embattled nation. However, this initial openness was conditional on the West respecting Burkina Faso's sovereignty and refraining from interfering in its internal affairs, a stance that Traoré made clear in his public addresses. This emphasis on national sovereignty soon became a defining feature of Traoré's foreign policy, shaping his interactions on the global stage. He expressed growing skepticism towards the West's commitment to genuinely assisting Burkina Faso, viewing their interventions as often self-serving and ultimately ineffective in addressing the root causes of the conflict. This skepticism was further fueled by a wave of anti-French sentiment that swept across Burkina Faso and the wider Sahel region, reflecting a broader disillusionment with former colonial powers. The presence of French troops, once seen as a bulwark against terrorism, became increasingly unpopular among the local population. They were perceived as an unwelcome vestige of colonialism, and their presence was seen as doing little to curb the violence that continued to plague the country. Traoré capitalized on this sentiment, and in a move that sent shockwaves through the region, he ordered the withdrawal of all French forces from Burkina Faso, marking a significant shift in the country's foreign policy. This expulsion of French troops marked a decisive break with Burkina Faso's former colonial power, symbolizing a new era of self-determination. It also signaled a broader shift in regional alliances as Burkina Faso sought to redefine its place within the African continent. Traoré, seeking to fill the void left by the French, turned towards new partners, most notably Russia, in an effort to secure alternative sources of support and strengthen his nation's sovereignty. Now let's delve into the economic initiatives that have been pivotal in Burkina Faso's journey towards prosperity. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership has sparked a wave of innovation and resilience among the people. You see, his administration has focused on boosting local industries, improving agricultural practices, and fostering entrepreneurship. These efforts, though challenging, are gradually transforming the economic landscape of the nation. It's a struggle, no doubt, but one filled with hope and determination. The road to prosperity is long and arduous, but with sustained effort and commitment, the future looks promising for Burkina Faso. As we delve into the era of authoritarianism, it's crucial to understand how dissent was systematically suppressed. The government employed various tactics to silence opposition, including stringent laws and heavy-handed enforcement. This period marked a significant shift in the political landscape, with many voices being muted and freedoms curtailed. The insurgency in Burkina Faso escalated rapidly, bringing with it a devastating toll on the population. Communities were torn apart, and countless lives were lost. The conflict created a climate of fear and uncertainty, making daily life a constant struggle for survival. The humanitarian crisis that followed was one of the darkest chapters in the nation's history. In an effort to bring peace, the government introduced amnesty programs aimed at reconciliation. However, these initiatives were fraught with complexities. Balancing justice and forgiveness proved to be a delicate task. Many questioned whether true reconciliation could be achieved without addressing the underlying causes of the conflict and ensuring accountability for past atrocities. Despite the turmoil and uncertainty, a significant portion of the public continued to support the government. This support was driven by a desire for stability and a hope for a better future. However, it also highlighted the deep divisions within society and the varying perspectives on the path forward for Burkina Faso. The nation's journey through these turbulent times remains a testament to its resilience and enduring spirit.